The rattlesnake's warning came seconds before the bullet whizzed past Jessie Dalton's ear, embedding itself in the weathered wood of the general store behind her. Montana Territory, 1874, was no place for a woman alone, especially not one whose husband had driven off with their wagon and everything they owned 3 weeks prior. "Get down," a deep voice commanded as another shot rang out. Jessie dropped to her knees, the parched dirt of Main Street soaking through her already tattered skirts. Tears of frustration burned her eyes. 3 weeks of sleeping in a hastily constructed lean-to outside of Whitrock, taking in laundry for pennies, and facing the pitying stares of townspeople had worn her pride to nothing. "Stay low and move toward the alley," the same voice instructed. Through the cloud of dust kicked up by panicked townspeople scattering for cover, Jessie caught sight of a man crouched behind a water trough, revolver drawn. His face was partially obscured by the shadow cast by his wide-brimmed hat, but she could make out a strong jawline covered in several days' worth of stubble. Another shot split the air, and Jessie scrambled toward the alley as instructed. The stranger moved in tandem, providing cover with well-placed return fire. Once they reached the relative safety between buildings, Jessie pressed her back against the rough wall, heart hammering against her ribs. "You all right, madam?" the man asked, quickly reloading his weapon. "Yes," Jessie managed, though her voice trembled. "Thank you, Mr. Oliver Hayes." He tipped his hat slightly. "And you'd be the Dalton woman if I'm not mistaken." Jessie stiffened. "How do you know who I am, small town?" Oliver peered cautiously around the corner. "Word travels fast about a woman whose husband took off with their wagon and left her with nothing but the clothes on her back." His eyes, a startling shade of blue, met hers. "That'd be Thomas Dalton, right? Tall fellow, scar across his left cheek." "Yes," Jessie confirmed, unsure whether to be relieved someone knew her situation or mortified by the same fact. "Have you seen him? Passed through Silver Creek about 4 days ago." Oliver's expression hardened. "Selling off what looked like household goods for gambling money." The revelation sent a sharp pain through Jessie's chest. The wagon had contained everything: her mother's china, the quilt her grandmother had made, their small savings hidden in a false bottom of their trunk. "Who's shooting at us?" she asked, changing the subject before tears could form. "Not us." "Me?" Oliver checked the ammunition in his gun. "Porter brothers, they don't take kindly to losing at cards. And they decided shooting up Main Street at noon was an appropriate response." The corner of Oliver's mouth twitched. "Never claimed they were bright." He listened for a moment. "I think they've moved on for now. Too many witnesses." Jessie smoothed her skirts, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. 3 weeks of washing other people's laundry in cold water had left her hands raw and her one dress faded. Her honey blonde hair, once her pride, hung limply around her shoulders, partially escaped from its pins. "I should go," she said stiffly. "I have laundry waiting and Mrs. Dalton," Oliver interrupted, his voice gentler than before. "Your husband isn't coming back." The words, spoken with such certainty, landed like physical blows. Jessie had known, of course. Known from the moment she'd woken alone in their rented room to find the wagon gone. But hearing it stated so plainly by a stranger stripped away the last of her denial. "I'm heading to Sweetwater," Oliver continued. "I've got business there and it's a 3-day ride. Word is they're building a proper town, good folks setting up businesses." "Why are you telling me this?" Jessie asked, though something inside her already knew. Oliver Hayes studied her for a long moment. "You'll ride beside me now," he said finally. "If you've a mind to start fresh somewhere folk don't know your business." Jessie blinked, taken aback by the direct offer. "Mr. Hayes, I don't know you. For all I know, you could be worse than the husband who abandoned me." "Fair enough," he nodded. "But I've got a horse, supplies, and I'm headed somewhere promising. You've got skills any new settlement needs, and you're clearly tougher than most." His eyes traveled over her worn appearance. "I'm offering safe passage, Mrs. Dalton, nothing more, nothing less." "And what do you get from this arrangement?" Suspicion laced her voice. 3 weeks alone had taught her hard lessons about charity. Company on a lonely trail, he answered honestly. And maybe some decent cooking if you've the skill for it. Jessie weighed her options quickly. Stay in Whiterock, where her status as the woman Thomas Dalton abandoned colored every interaction, or ride with a stranger to an uncertain future. I need an hour to gather my things, she said finally. Oliver nodded, seeming unsurprised by her decision. I'll meet you at the livery stable at 2. Bring only what you can carry. He moved to leave, then paused. And Mrs. Dalton, I don't make promises I can't keep. You'll be safe with me. Something in his tone made her believe him. True to his word, Oliver was waiting at the livery when Jessie arrived, her meager possessions bundled in a small sack. He sat atop a sturdy buckskin gelding, leading a second horse, a dapple gray mare. She's not mine, Jessie said, eyeing the second horse. She is now, Oliver replied. Consider her payment for your company and cooking. I can't accept, you can and you will. His tone brooked no argument. A woman needs her own horse out here. Independence is survival. Jessie swallowed her pride and approached the mare, who nickered softly as she stroked her velvety nose. Does she have a name? Whisper. Oliver adjusted his saddle. She's steady and smart, won't spook easy. With practiced hands that belied her city upbringing, Jessie secured her bundle to the saddle and mounted. The sensation of being on horseback again, something Thomas had rarely allowed, sent a thrill through her. As they rode out of Whiterock, Jessie felt the stares of townspeople following them. Mrs. Peterson, who had paid her pennies for washing, stood outside the mercantile, arms crossed in disapproval. The blacksmith paused his hammering to watch them pass. Reverend Miller's wife whispered behind her hand to another woman. Let them talk, Jessie thought fiercely. She squared her shoulders and lifted her chin. Whatever awaited her in Sweetwater couldn't be worse than the purgatory of Whiterock. They rode in comfortable silence until the town disappeared behind them. The vast Montana landscape stretched before them, rolling hills dotted with pine trees, distant mountains etched against the impossibly blue sky. For the first time in weeks, Jessie felt like she could breathe. You ride well, Oliver commented eventually, not what I expected from a city woman. My father raised horses before we moved to Chicago, Jessie explained. I spent more time in the stables than the parlor, much to my mother's dismay. How'd you end up out here with Thomas Dalton? Jessie sighed, the familiar pain of her mistakes rising like bile. He came to Chicago with stories of opportunity in Montana territory. Silver mines, timber, land for the taking. He was handsome, charming. She trailed off, embarrassed by her naivety. And your family? Dead. Influenza took both my parents 2 winters ago. The memory still cut deep. Thomas appeared shortly after when I was desperate and alone. Oliver nodded, understanding in his eyes. Vultures circle when they smell vulnerability. They made camp as the sun began its descent in a small clearing beside a stream. Oliver efficiently unpacked supplies, setting up a small campfire and showing Jessie where he kept the cooking implements. You weren't joking about the cooking, she observed, inspecting his cast iron skillet. A man can only eat his own beans for so long before contemplating drastic measures, he replied with the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Despite her exhaustion, Jessie found herself smiling back. She set about preparing a simple meal from his supplies: bacon, beans, and biscuits mixed and cooked in the skillet. As they ate, the tension of the day slowly ebbed. How did you know? She asked suddenly. That Thomas wouldn't come back, Oliver took his time answering, chewing thoughtfully. I've seen his type before, men who take what they want and move on, no roots, no conscience. He set his plate aside. When I saw him in Silver Creek, he was already eyeing a woman at the saloon, spinning the same tales he likely told you. The betrayal stung, despite its predictability. I was a fool. No, Oliver said firmly. You were someone who believed in another person's goodness. That's not foolish. It's human. Jessie studied him across the fire, this stranger who had offered her escape when she needed it most. And what's your story, Mr. Hayes? What brings you to this territory? A shadow crossed his face. War changed things back east. Couldn't stomach the memories, so I headed west. Been wandering since, taking odd jobs, doing some scouting for the territory surveyors. He prodded the fire with a stick. Heard about Sweetwater from a man who's setting up a sawmill there. They need good people with skills. And what are your skills, Mr. Hayes? He smiled enigmatically. I'm handy with horses, decent with a gun, and I mind my own business. Out here, that's enough. Jessie sensed there was more to his story but respected his reluctance to share. They'd both earned their privacy. As the fire died down, Oliver showed her how to set up her bedroll. I'll sleep on the other side of the fire, he said matter-of-factly. Nothing to fear from me, Mrs. Dalton. Jessie, she corrected him. If we're to travel together, you might as well use my name, he nodded. Jessie then, and I'm Oliver to my friends. Are we friends, Mr. Hayes? His eyes caught hers across the dying embers. We're getting there. The following days fell into a comfortable routine. They rode from sunrise until mid-afternoon, Oliver occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing knowledge about the terrain. Jessie found herself relaxing in his company, impressed by his quiet competence and respectful manner. On their second evening, as they sat by the campfire, Oliver surprised her by pulling a worn deck of cards from his saddlebag. Thought we might pass the time, he explained, shuffling expertly. Unless you're opposed to such diversions. My father taught me poker when I was 12, Jessie admitted with a small smile. Mother never knew, of course. Oliver's eyebrows rose. Full of surprises, aren't you? They played for small stones instead of money, and Jessie surprised herself by winning more hands than she lost. Oliver took his defeats with good grace, his respect for her visibly growing. Where did you learn to play so well? She asked during a break in their game. Army, he answered, dealing another hand. Not much else to do during the long nights between battles. You fought in the war. Oliver nodded, his expression sobering. Union cavalry, saw things no man should see. The pain in his voice was unmistakable, and Jessie instinctively reached across the space between them, her hand briefly touching his. I'm sorry. He stared at her hand for a moment before withdrawing his own. Long time ago now. That night, Jessie lay awake, listening to Oliver's steady breathing across the fire. For the first time since Thomas had abandoned her, she felt something other than despair, a cautious optimism about what tomorrow might bring. The third day of their journey brought a change in the weather. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the air grew heavy with the promise of rain. There's a line shack about 2 hours ahead, Oliver said, studying the sky with a frown. We'd best make for it. This storm looks mean. They pushed their horses harder, racing against the rapidly approaching storm. The first fat drops of rain began to fall as a small, weathered cabin came into view, nestled against a copse of pine trees. By the time they reached the shack, the rain was coming down in earnest. They quickly stabled the horses in the lean-to attached to the cabin, then hurried inside with their supplies. The cabin was small but solidly built, containing a single room with a stone fireplace, a rough wooden table with 2 chairs, and a narrow cot pushed against one wall. Trappers use these during winter months, Oliver explained as he set about starting a fire. Territory rule is you leave it better than you found it. Jessie busied herself with unpacking their food supplies, grateful for the shelter. Outside, thunder rumbled and lightning split the darkening sky. Looks like we'll be here for the night, Oliver observed, hanging their wet coats near the growing fire. The realization that they would be sharing this small space overnight sent an unexpected flutter through Jessie's stomach. In their previous camps, the open sky and distance provided by the campfire had maintained a certain propriety. Here, the close quarters created an intimacy that made her acutely aware of Oliver as a man, not just her traveling companion. As if sensing her discomfort, Oliver gestured to the cot. You take that, I'll make do on the floor. That hardly seems fair, Jessie protested. I've slept on worse, he assured her with a wry smile. They prepared a simple meal together, moving around each other in the confined space with growing ease. Oliver told her more about Sweetwater as they ate about the small but growing settlement, the plans for a proper schoolhouse, the mix of people coming together to build something new. "What will you do when we get there?" Jessie asked. Oliver hesitated. "I've been offered work at the livery. Man named Jenkins is setting it up, needs someone who knows horses." He glanced at her. "What about you?" Jessie considered the question. In Whiterock, laundry had been her only option. "I can sew," she said finally, "and cook, perhaps a boarding house eventually. Somewhere respectable for single men working in town." "You'd be good at that," Oliver said with genuine warmth. "Town needs decent places for folks to stay." The storm intensified as night fell, wind howling around the small cabin and rain lashing against the single window. Despite the weather's fury, Jessie felt safer than she had in months, watching Oliver methodically clean his revolver by firelight. "Can I ask you something personal?" she ventured. He looked up, hands pausing in their work. "You can ask, can't promise I'll answer. Have you ever been married?" The question hung between them for several heartbeats before Oliver set his gun aside. "Once," he said quietly. "Her name was Sarah. Married her before I went to war." Jessie waited, sensing there was more to the story. "She took sick while I was gone," he continued, voice low. "Pneumonia. By the time her letter reached me, she was already buried." His hands, capable and strong, twisted together in his lap. "Came home to an empty house and her grave." "I'm so sorry," Jessie whispered, her heart aching for his loss. Oliver shook his head slightly. "It was a lifetime ago. But it's why I understand something about starting over." The vulnerability in his admission created a new bond between them. Jessie found herself telling him things she'd never shared with anyone about her childhood dreams before hardship had narrowed her expectations, about the gradual disillusionment of her marriage to Thomas, about her fear of trusting her judgment again. "Thomas made me doubt myself," she confessed. "Every decision, every thought. He'd tell me I was wrong until I believed him." "Men like that," Oliver said, anger edging his voice, "they can only feel big by making others feel small." "I let him do it," Jessie said, shame coloring her words. "I let him whittle me down to nothing." "No," Oliver said firmly. "You survived. There's strength in that, Jessie, more than you know." His faith in her, this man who barely knew her, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. She turned away, embarrassed by the display of emotion. "It's late," Oliver said gently. "We should get some rest." Jessie nodded, retreating to the cot while Oliver arranged his bedroll on the floor near the fire. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her, her mind churning with new possibilities and the strange comfort she found in Oliver's presence. Sometime in the night, she awoke to find him sitting by the window, silhouetted against the occasional flash of lightning. The strong lines of his profile, the set of his shoulders, there was something steadfast about him that called to something deep within her. "Oliver," she murmured. He turned, surprised. "Did I wake you? Sorry." "No," she assured him, "just can't sleep. The storm." He nodded, understanding. "It'll pass by morning." "Like all storms, I suppose," she said softly. His eyes met hers in the dim light. "Yes, even the worst ones eventually break." Something passed between them in that moment, an unspoken understanding, a recognition. Jessie felt it like physical warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time since Thomas had driven away with their wagon, she felt a glimmer of hope for her future. Morning brought clear skies and sunshine that transformed the landscape. Drops of rain clung to pine needles, sparkling like diamonds in the early light. The air smelled clean and new as they prepared to continue their journey. "We should reach Sweetwater by nightfall," Oliver said as they saddled the horses. Jessie felt a curious mix of anticipation and regret. These days of traveling with Oliver had changed something fundamental within her. The thought of reaching their destination and parting ways left an unexpected hollow feeling. They rode at an easy pace through breathtaking country, rolling meadows bursting with wildflowers, stands of aspen trees whose leaves shimmered like coins in the breeze, and finally, a valley that opened before them, cradling a settlement of perhaps 30 buildings. "Sweetwater," Oliver announced, reining in his horse on a rise overlooking the town. Named for the spring that runs through it. From their vantage point, Jessie could see that while modest, the settlement had an air of permanence that many frontier towns lacked. The buildings were well constructed, not the hasty shelters she'd seen elsewhere. A church steeple rose at one end of the main street, and she could make out corrals, gardens, and even what appeared to be a small schoolhouse. "It's lovely," she breathed. Oliver smiled, pleasure evident in his expression. "Thought you might think so." As they rode into town, Jessie became aware of curious glances from townsfolk going about their business. Unlike the judgmental stares of Wytrock, these seemed merely interested, even welcoming. Oliver led them to a two-story building with a freshly painted sign reading Jenkins Livery and Smithy. A broad-shouldered man with graying hair emerged, face breaking into a wide grin at the sight of Oliver. "Hayes, right on time," he called, striding forward to shake Oliver's hand. "Beginning to think you might have changed your mind. Said I'd be here, didn't I?" Oliver dismounted, clasping the man's hand warmly. "Jenkins, this is Mrs. Jessie Dalton. She's looking to start fresh in Sweetwater." Jenkins tipped his hat respectfully. "Madam, any friend of Hayes is welcome here." His shrewd eyes took in her travel-worn appearance without judgment. "You'll be wanting lodgings, I expect?" "Yes," Jessie replied, suddenly uncertain. The reality of arriving in a new town with virtually nothing hit her afresh. "Martha Simmons runs a boarding house for respectable ladies," Jenkins informed her. "Just down the street, white house with blue shutters. Tell her I sent you." Oliver helped Jessie dismount and gathered her small bundle of possessions. "I'll walk you there," he offered. They made their way down the dusty main street, Jessie acutely aware that their journey together was ending. When they reached the boarding house, a tidy two-story structure with a welcoming porch, she turned to face him. "I don't know how to thank you," she began. "No need," Oliver cut in. "You held up your end, company and cooking as agreed." His tone was light, but something in his eyes belied the casualness of his words. Before Jessie could respond, the front door opened and a plump, pleasant-faced woman stepped onto the porch. "Well now, visitors," she exclaimed. "I'm Martha Simmons. How can I help you folks?" Oliver explained their situation, and Martha immediately took Jessie under her wing, assuring her that she had a lovely room available and that Sweetwater was always in need of skilled women. "The Mercantile's looking for a seamstress," she informed Jessie. "And there's talk of opening a proper café come spring. Why, you could have your pick of opportunities." As Martha chattered on, Jessie found her attention fixed on Oliver, who had stepped back slightly, hat in hand. There was an air of finality about his stance that made her heart constrict. "Mrs. Simmons, might I have a moment with Mr. Hayes before he goes?" Jessie asked. Martha's knowing smile suggested she understood perfectly. "Of course, dear, I'll just get your room ready. Take your time." She disappeared inside, leaving them alone on the porch. "Well," Oliver said, twisting his hat in his hands. "Seems you've landed on your feet." "Thanks to you," Jessie replied. "I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't offered to bring me here." "You'd have found your way," he said with quiet confidence. "You're stronger than you know, Jessie Dalton." The use of her full name emphasized the formality of their parting. Jessie felt words bubbling up inside her words about how these days with him had awakened something she thought dead, how his respect had helped her find her own strength again. Instead, she simply asked, "Will I see you again?" His eyes, those startling blue eyes that had first met hers in a dusty alley, softened. "Sweetwater's a small town. Reckon our paths will cross." It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but Jessie nodded, unwilling to press for more than he was offering. Oliver settled his hat back on his head and took a step backward. "Goodbye, Mrs. Dalton. I wish you well." "Goodbye, Mr. Hayes," she managed, fighting the urge to reach for him. She watched him walk away, back straight, shoulders squared. Only when he disappeared around the corner did she allow herself to acknowledge the ache in her chest. The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. Martha Simmons proved to be not only a landlady but a one-woman welcoming committee. introducing Jessie to everyone in Sweetwater and singing her praises at every turn. The mercantile owner, Mr. Peterson, hired Jessie on the spot when she showed him samples of her needlework. Before long, she was not only sewing but helping manage the store's inventory and accounts, her education proving valuable in unexpected ways. Oliver, true to his word, had taken the position at Jenkins' livery. Jessie caught glimpses of him around town exercising horses, trading with local ranchers, sharing a drink with Jenkins outside the stable at day's end. Each sighting sent a flutter through her heart, but their interactions remained polite and distant. 6 weeks after her arrival in Sweetwater, Jessie sat on the boarding house porch, enjoying the evening breeze with Martha and 2 other lady boarders. The conversation drifted from town gossip to the upcoming harvest dance. "You'll come, won't you, Jessie?" Martha pressed. "The whole town turns out, music, food, dancing under the stars. It's quite magical." "I don't know," Jessie hedged. The thought of watching others pair off for dancing held little appeal. "Oliver Hayes will be there," Martha added casually, her eyes twinkling. "Man's turned down 3 dinner invitations from eligible ladies since you arrived." Jessie felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sure Mr. Hayes's social calendar is none of my concern." "MMHMM," Martha hummed skeptically. "Just like he doesn't find reason to ride past this house most evenings around this time." As if summoned by her words, Oliver appeared at the far end of the street, mounted on his buckskin gelding. He tipped his hat politely as he passed, and Jessie returned the gesture with a small wave. "That man's got it bad," one of the other boarders commented when he was out of earshot. "Got what bad?" Jessie asked, feigning ignorance. All 3 women laughed knowingly. "Honey," Martha said, patting her hand, "that man's been sweet on you since you rode into town together. Whole town's just waiting for one of you to admit it." The revelation left Jessie speechless. She'd assumed Oliver's distance meant he viewed their journey as nothing more than a practical arrangement, concluded once they reached Sweetwater. "He's never indicated any such interest," she finally managed. Martha's expression softened. "Some men, especially those who have known loss, are cautious with their hearts. Doesn't mean they don't feel deeply." She rose from her chair. "Now, about that dance. I've got just the dress pattern if you're of a mind to make something new." The night of the harvest dance arrived clear and cool, with a full moon illuminating the town square where lanterns had been strung between trees. Tables groaned with food brought by townspeople, and a small band of local musicians tuned their instruments on a makeshift stage. Jessie had indeed made herself a new dress, a simple but elegant creation of deep blue calico, with lace trim she'd salvaged from an old tablecloth at the mercantile. Martha had insisted on arranging her hair, pinning the golden waves into an elaborate style that left soft tendrils framing her face. "You look beautiful, dear," Martha declared as they walked to the dance together. "Positively radiant." Jessie felt beautiful, and the sensation was as novel as it was pleasant. Thomas had rarely offered compliments, preferring to highlight her flaws. The months of hard work and decent food in Sweetwater had restored her figure and brought color back to her cheeks. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. The dance was already in full swing when they arrived. Children ran laughing between groups of adults, older couples swayed together to a familiar tune, and young people flirted at the edges of the gathering. Jessie accepted a cup of cider from Mr. Peterson, and found herself drawn into conversation with several townswomen who had become friends. She was so engaged that she didn't notice Oliver's arrival until a hush fell over those nearest to her. Turning, she found him standing a few feet away, hat in hand. The sight of him stole her breath. Gone was the trail-worn cowboy. In his place stood a man transformed by a clean shave, pressed shirt, and polished boots. "Evening, ladies," he greeted the group, though his eyes never left Jessie. "Mrs. Dalton, I wondered if you might honor me with a dance." The women around her exchanged delighted glances as Jessie set aside her cider. "I'd like that, Mr. Hayes." He led her to where other couples were dancing, placing one hand respectfully at her waist while the other clasped her fingers. As they began to move with the music, Jessie became aware of nothing but the clean scent of soap and leather, the strength in his hand against her back, the warmth in his eyes as they met hers. "You look beautiful tonight," he said, voice pitched low for her ears alone. "Thank you," she replied, cheeks warming at his directness. "You clean up rather well yourself." His smile reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "Been saving my good shirt for a special occasion." "And is this a special occasion, Mr. Hayes?" The teasing question made his expression turn serious. "Jessie," he said, using her given name for the first time since their journey ended, "every day I've seen you in this town has been special." The simple honesty of his statement took her breath away. "Then why have you kept your distance?" She dared to ask. Oliver guided her through a turn before answering. "When a man brings a woman to a new town, folks talk. Didn't want to tarnish your reputation by presuming more than you might want." "Very considerate," she murmured. "And what if I did want more?" His steps faltered slightly, eyes searching hers. "Do you?" Instead of answering directly, Jessie asked, "Why did you really bring me to Sweetwater, Oliver?" The music swelled around them as he considered his response. "Because from the moment I saw you in that alley in White Rock, standing tall despite everything that had been taken from you, I knew you were someone worth knowing." His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "I told myself I was just being decent, offering help to someone who needed it. But truth is, I couldn't bear the thought of leaving you behind." The admission, so plainly stated, made Jessie's heart soar. "I've missed you," she confessed. "These weeks in town, seeing you but not really knowing you, it's been harder than I expected." "I've missed you too," he said softly. "The trail seems mighty quiet without your company." As the song ended, neither moved to part. Around them, couples shifted for the next dance, but Oliver kept his hand at her waist. "Would you walk with me?" he asked. "Just to the edge of the square. I'd like to talk without the whole town watching." Jessie nodded, allowing him to guide her away from the crowd to a quieter spot beneath an old oak tree. The music and laughter provided a pleasant backdrop as they stood facing each other in the mixed light of moon and distant lanterns. "I'm not a man who finds words easy," Oliver began, "but I need you to know something." He took a deep breath. "These past months since Thomas left you, you've rebuilt yourself piece by piece. I've watched you grow stronger, more confident. You've made a place for yourself here through your own hard work and determination." Jessie felt tears prick her eyes at his understanding of her journey. "And I admire that more than I can say," he continued. "I admire you, Jessie Dalton, your courage, your kindness, your strength." He reached for her hand, holding it gently between both of his. "I know it's soon, and I know you've been hurt badly, but I hope there might be something growing between us, something worth exploring if you're willing." The sincerity in his eyes, the careful respect with which he held her hand, everything about him was the opposite of what she had known with Thomas. Where her husband had demanded and taken, Oliver offered and asked. "I am willing," she whispered, "more than willing." Relief and joy transformed his face. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss so gentle it brought tears to her eyes. When he drew back, his thumbs brushed the moisture from her cheeks. "No tears," he murmured. "Not tonight." "Happy ones," she assured him, reaching up to touch his face. "I never thought I'd feel this way again, never thought I'd trust enough to try." Oliver turned his face to press a kiss against her palm. "We'll take it slow," he promised, "day by day. But I want you to know my intentions are honorable, Jessie. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd be proud to court you properly." Jessie smiled, a genuine smile that came from deep within. "I think I'd like that very much, Oliver Hayes." They returned to the dance hand in hand, aware of the approving glances and knowing smiles from townsfolk. As Oliver led her into another dance, Jessie realized that the wagon Thomas had driven away might have carried her past, but it had also, inadvertently, delivered her to a future brighter than she could have imagined. 1 year later, On a perfect autumn day much like the night of that harvest dance, Oliver and Jessie Hayes stood on the porch of their newly built home on the outskirts of Sweetwater. The small but sturdy house overlooked a corral where Whisper grazed alongside Oliver's buckskin. Inside, a quilt Jessie had crafted through the winter months lay across their bed, and shelves Oliver had built housed the books they'd collected. The boarding house Jessie had dreamed of was becoming reality, with construction beginning on an addition to their home that would welcome travelers by spring. "Any regrets?" Oliver asked, his arm secure around her waist as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant orange and pink. Jessie leaned her head against his shoulder, her wedding ring catching the last rays of sunlight. "Only that we wasted those weeks being polite strangers in town." Oliver chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "We had time to make up for it." "That we did," she agreed, thinking of their courtship, the picnics by Sweetwater Creek, the long rides exploring the valley, the evenings reading to each other by lamplight. When Oliver had proposed 3 months after the harvest dance, standing in this very spot where their home now stood, Jessie had accepted without hesitation. Their wedding in the town church had been attended by everyone in Sweetwater, Martha Simmons crying louder than anyone. "Do you ever wonder about him?" Oliver asked quietly. "About Thomas?" Jessie considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not because I miss him or wish things had been different, but because if he hadn't taken that wagon and left me behind, I might never have found my way to you." Oliver turned her in his arms to face him. "Then I suppose I owe the man a debt of gratitude," he said, only half joking. "Though if I ever come across him, I might still have to break his nose for how he treated you." "My gallant protector," Jessie teased, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. As the kiss deepened, Jessie marveled at how life's hardest moments could lead to its greatest joys. The husband who had abandoned her had inadvertently led her to a man who cherished her, to a town that valued her, and to a strength within herself she might never have discovered otherwise. When at last they parted, Oliver rested his forehead against hers. "Happy?" he asked simply. "Completely," she answered, meaning it with all her heart. "You?" His smile, warm and certain, told her everything she needed to know. "Jessie Hayes," he said, using the name that still thrilled her to hear. "The day you decided to ride beside me was the luckiest day of my life." As twilight settled around them and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they stood together on the porch of the home they had built, not just the physical structure, but the life they had chosen to create together. A life built on mutual respect, shared dreams, and a love that had begun with 6 simple words spoken in a dusty Montana street. "You'll ride beside me now," and she had, every step of the way.